The Premier League is back and so are Liverpool, but it was far from the ideal start to the season today as the Reds are held 2-2 by newly promoted Fulham at Craven Cottage. Welcome along everyone to the Debrief on the Blood Red channel, courtesy of the Liverpool Echo with myself, Patrick Smith, and the Liverpool.com editor, Matt Addison, as we dissect the Reds' first Premier League match of the season. So Matt, let's get a general overview of that one. It's not quite what we were expecting, was it?
No, it certainly wasn't the perfect start, was it? I mean, it's probably a point more than I was thinking they were going to get for a long time in that match. I think Fulham were excellent, but yeah, Liverpool just didn't really get going, out-battled and out-fought for a large period of that, which you just don't really expect. You knew that Fulham were going to come out of the blocks quickly. They've obviously just come up. The last time they were in the Premier League, they didn't have any fans for the entire season, and it really does feel a bit like a loss for Liverpool, which obviously we know the situation. We've spoken about it all summer in terms of every single point matters, and obviously, how good Manchester City are and the levels that you'd expect them to get to. It's very much a case of against pretty much every other team apart from them, you've got to win. So Liverpool now, already they've dropped points. They've given themselves a little bit less of that margin for error. And it just makes it a little bit more difficult later on in the season. It just wasn't a particularly good performance. I think when you see Virgil van Dijk giving away a penalty in the way that he did, you kind of know really that your luck just isn't in. It wasn't a good performance. Injury to Thiago. There really wasn't many positives to take there, other than probably Fulham will feel that they probably should have won that match, and Liverpool have thankfully at least got 1 point on the board, because they could quite easily have come away with absolutely nothing.
That's the thing, Matt. It's such a surprise what we've seen today. Let's work chronologically. Fair play to Fulham. I thought they were absolutely brilliant today. I've got a couple of comments here. Tom Dempsey here saying Fulham played really well, to be fair. To be fair to them, Matt, they were brilliant, weren't they? For the first, I'd say, hour, it was really, really difficult for Liverpool, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you didn't really think that they could keep that intensity up, but they pretty much did it for probably 70, 75 minutes, the last sort of 15 minutes, if maybe you've been a little bit generous. Maybe it was a bit less than that. But, the last few minutes, they kind of dropped in and had to defend. But up to that point, they just didn't give Liverpool any time. I think, there's going to be conversations really around the entirety of the pitch for Liverpool. The midfield was probably particularly poor, you'd say, but at the same time, they just didn't have any time to think about it. Thiago was probably the pick of the three that started, but obviously gets injured, doesn't particularly play exceptionally well himself. It was just he was kind of the least worst of the three, but they just couldn't cope really.
We could barely string 5 passes together, could we, Matt?
Exactly. I can't think of a single move where Liverpool were in control, and that's the one thing that you expect with Thiago in the team last season. That was the thing, wasn't it? When Thiago wasn't there, it was a little bit more chaotic. It wasn't chaotic today, but Liverpool just didn't get their foot on the ball and stop Fulham doing basically what the crowd wanted them to do, which was to get in their faces. There was a couple of fouls and a couple of yellow cards in there, but that's, as I said before, you've got to expect that, I think, from Fulham. And Liverpool just looked surprised really by how good and how strong Fulham were. They've not made many changes this summer. They've lost a couple of key players, but you'd never have known that. You'd never know that they were frustrated by what they'd done in the transfer market this summer. They were really, really good, and Liverpool, first and foremost, had to match them physically and put in the same kind of intensity and the same kind of effort. It's kind of ironic, isn't it, the weekend that Pep lined his book called Identity, and our identity is that intensity, and all the rest of it comes out. It very much was not Liverpool that did that today. They were really, really poor.
Yeah, we're definitely on the back foot when we know Fulham had the intensity. It was so uncharacteristic of the Liverpool midfield. I thought really, really strange on that. A bit reactionary at times as well. And Fulham's first goal came through a lack of reaction, let's be honest. A brilliant head, defending Alexander Mitrovic is always going to be a tough task. But, Trent had no chance in that challenge in the air, really, did he?
No, there's an argument that he could have done a little bit more, but I think when Alexander Mitrovic gets a run on you and is in the air jumping and is Alexander Mitrovic, it's very, very hard to kind of do anything about that. There's probably an argument that he could have done a little bit more than what he did, but even then, you'd still, from that range, expect Mitrovic to win the header and score. He's not going to miss from that sort of position. So, yeah, I don't know. There's been a lot of talk. I think 43 goals was it that he got last season, Mitrovic, all summer. People have been kind of saying, well, is he going to be able to do anything in the Premier League? Is he, going to get anywhere near those sorts? I mean, he's not going to score that many, obviously, but you'd expect him to be able to do a little bit in the league this season. He did look like a player that had a bit of a point to prove today. I think he was absolutely exceptional. bullied Liverpool's defence, not just Trent, the other players as well. Joe Matip looked a little bit flustered. I mentioned Van Dijk before, putting in the uncharacteristic challenges, and yeah, it just wasn't a good day for Liverpool generally defensively. So I'm sure there will be a lot of talk around what Trent did with the header and what he should have done, but there always is with him. It's an easy one, I think, to pinpoint it on him. On the evidence of the 90 minutes, whoever that would have been at the far post, I don't think Liverpool really would have dealt with it that particularly well. So yeah, just wasn't a good performance. They really do need to improve quickly.
Yeah, you're always going to get those social media idiots, aren't you, going to be talking about that one? But, a lot of doom and gloom today, a lot to be negative about. But there were a few positives, Matt. We'll move on to the midfield later because that clearly is a problem. But in the same substitution as Thiago leaving the field, Darwin Nunez came on, and that is probably the main positive to take from today, Matt, isn't it? Darwin Nunez, I mean, what a performance from the Uruguayan.
Yeah, I'd probably say he's the only positive, really. I mean, he's just one of those players that you're going to see him take a lot of shots. He's going to miss a lot of chances, but he's going to score a lot as well because you just see him every time he gets the ball. He's very positive. He generally tends to make the right decision. There was a couple of times just before the goal where he maybe didn't make the right call and tried to pass when he should have shot and tried a little flick, which didn't quite come off, but he just keeps plugging away and doesn't seem to get frustrated by it. He seems to just keep having goes at goal, and when you're as good as he is, if you do it enough times, you're going to find the back of the net. So yeah, a goal and an assist for him. I think the contrast with Roberto Firmino was really, really obvious. Firmino did absolutely nothing in the game and didn't really touch the ball. Darwin was a lot better than him. So yeah, I think it was a slight surprise to me that Klopp didn't throw him in from the start, but I think it'd be an even bigger surprise next time around if he's not in the starting 11. You'd be shocked because he just offered so much more and just gave Fulham a lot more to think about. I think they gave the defence, rather than dropping deep like what Firmino does, he was sort of occupying the centre backs a lot more. That gives a knock on effect of the space for Diaz and Salah and Harvey Elliott, who I thought made a bit of a difference. Even James Milner, I thought was pretty good when he came off the bench. So yeah, it all kind of stemmed really from just giving Fulham an extra bit of a problem to solve, rather than just letting the play happen in front of them and in that congested midfield area where there was no time. It just gave Liverpool a bit of an option really to do something a little bit different. Loads and loads of crosses going into the box, but it's only really when Darwin Nunez is there that it's worth doing that. So yeah, that was the positive. Unfortunately for him, the goal and the assist is only giving Liverpool a point. I'm sure he would have wanted it to be a little bit more than that, but yeah, it was good to see him get off the mark, and we don't have to talk about that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously the individual comparison you can make between Firmino and Nunez, but it's more the impact that Nunez has on Liverpool as a team. We stretched, like the Fulham defence was so pressed up with Firmino because he was dropping deep, allowing there to be no space in midfield. Whereas as soon as Nunez comes on, there's all this space in behind, creates space in midfielders, especially with the likes of Harvey Elliott on the pitch. It's so important for us playing like that. But Matt, it was looking pretty positive with Nunez on the pitch. It looked like we were going to get that second goal, and then Mitrovic turned into a prime R9 Ronaldo, seemingly managing to turn the Liverpool defence and win a penalty against Van Dijk. There's been a lot of discontent, I'd say, on social media is probably the word, between Liverpool fans, whether it's a pen or not. What are your thoughts on that one? And yeah, bit of a difficult one for Liverpool to concede that, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was uncharacteristic, wasn't it? I don't think Liverpool can really argue with it, to be honest. I think it is a minimal foul, but it's a foul. He does touch him, and he does sort of give him the opportunity, if nothing else, by sticking his leg out. You're inviting that contact. You're inviting him to throw himself to ground. So yeah, I don't think Liverpool can really complain, to be honest. But yeah, it's just one of those. Normally, Van Dijk wouldn't do that. Normally, he'd stand up and be a little bit more sensible. I think you'd see that with a lot of defenders, but you just don't expect to see it from him. So yeah, Mitrovic was great. Liverpool made to look a little bit silly, I think, in terms of not just that, but one or two other moments as well where they just seem to be a little bit all over the place at the back. But I'm sure they'll get that sorted quickly. And like I say, you can't really argue with the penalty, but I just think even if you don't think it was a penalty, at the very least, you've got to say, just don't stick your leg out. Don't dangle that leg and invite the opportunity for him to throw himself over. I think it was a penalty, but even if you don't, I think it's still a mistake from Van Dijk to even give him that chance.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, there's contact. The contact is with the knees. The foot doesn't make contact, which a lot of people are seeing. But on the replay, you can see that they do collide knees, and that's why it is a penalty. But it's strange because it feels like we're talking about a loss. But of course, we did get an equaliser. Mohamed Salah again. I believe it's the 6th season in a row he scored in the opening day, Matt. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, seems to do it every single season, doesn't he? It's no bad trait, but I don't know. it doesn't really feel like he scored a goal, does it? Like you say, it feels like Liverpool have been defeated there. But yeah, it could have been a lot worse had he not done that.
I think it's an equaliser, but it feels like we're just sort of getting a goal back for a consolation or whatever. We're going to move on back to the midfield because that is the main crisis point that people are talking about today. Jurgen Klopp's made it very clear that he doesn't want to sign another midfielder. Now, during the game today, we were second best against the Fulham newly promoted midfield. Thiago's gone off injured. It's not looking like a great situation, Matt, currently, is it?
No, it's another injury, isn't it? It's another one to add to, I think it was 6, wasn't it, coming into this game that they already had, not all in that position, of course, but we know Naby Keita doesn't necessarily have the best record, although he was better last season. He was obviously ill this week, so that's why he didn't play. Possibility that he could have come back yesterday for training, but obviously wasn't present and wasn't in the squad today. So you'd imagine that he's back for the next game. For Thiago, you've just got to hope that it's nothing too bad, but I suppose it is kind of the fears being realised that a lot of people have been talking about this summer. We know that Keita will miss the odd game at the very least. We know that Thiago has got a bit of a tendency to do this. It's not his fault, of course, but it is kind of something that Liverpool knew about heading into this season. So they're not going to panic. They're not probably not going to enter the market unless it's something really, really bad for Thiago, which you'd hope it's a couple of weeks and no more than that. But we don't obviously know it at this moment. But yeah, I don't think there's a problem at the moment in terms of the injuries, and I don't think it's quite bad enough to panic just yet. But it's only 1 or 2 more injuries away. Obviously, Curtis Jones is now out for a couple of weeks. We know that there's other players in other positions as well. I mean, you'd only have to get 1 more injury in the attack and suddenly Harvey Elliott's having to play in forward areas, and that takes away another midfield option as well. So they are a little bit light. We know all the reasons why they've chosen to do that this summer. Obviously, looking ahead to future transfer windows and the bigger master plan. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's going to change anything. The one thing I would say is that I'd be surprised if Fabinho and Jordan Henderson played as bad as that in the next match and probably for the rest of this season. I think it would be a lot easier to stomach if Liverpool had played a little bit better. If Thiago had gone off injured and the other 2 in that midfield had played well, probably the panic would be a little bit lessened. But as it is, neither of them played particularly well. Thiago was, as we said before, the best of the bunch, but then gets injured just after half-time. So, yeah, it's not ideal, but there are players coming back and Liverpool will get better and will improve. They certainly won't be as bad as this in midfield or generally just, across the pitch for the rest of this season, I'm sure. So I can understand the panic, but maybe it's not quite time for that just yet.
Yeah, exactly that, Matt. Not the ideal start, but let's all keep calm. There's plenty of time left, 37 games to go, and who knows, maybe City will have a difficult game at West Ham on Sunday. And I'm sure when Liverpool play Palace next Monday, it'll be definitely a different story, hopefully on that first Premier League game at Anfield. But we're going to leave it there. Matt Addison, thank you very much for joining me. And thank you as well to all of you for watching along and giving us your comments at home. Please keep them coming. And be sure to stick around right here on the Blood Red channel because we'll bring you more reaction, including the press conferences from the game, including Jurgen Klopp. But from myself, Matt Addison and Patrick Smith, thanks for your company and goodbye for now.